The flight controller on the Pilatus PC-24 serves as the main control interface for the autopilot, thrust management system, flight director, and yaw damper. The controls on the panel are organized by function. These include pitch control, lateral control, speed control, altitude and vertical control, minimum set, and autopilot and flight director engagement. Green lights above the buttons indicate when the selected function is armed or active. The autopilot button engages both the autopilot and yaw damper. If no flight director modes were already selected, the pitch and roll sub-modes become active. To disengage the autopilot, push the autopilot button. This will leave the yaw damper on. This method is useful if you'd like to hand fly the aircraft on an approach or another segment of the flight. The yaw damper can then be disengaged before landing by pressing the quick disconnect button or the yaw damper button. To disengage both the autopilot and the yaw damper together, push the quick disconnect button. The autopilot will also be disengaged if the yaw damper is disengaged, a trim interrupt switch is pushed, or if one of the 4 manual trim buttons is activated. The yaw damper is automatically engaged whenever the autopilot is engaged. To engage the yaw damper without the autopilot, push the yaw damper button. The flight director button turns the flight director on or off on the PFD. The flight director cannot be removed from the display if the autopilot is on. The PFD couple button indicates which PFD the flight director is coupled to. Pushing the button changes the source from one side to the other. The bank button is used to toggle the low bank function on or off. When low bank is selected, the flight director bank angle is limited to 17 degrees. During a climb, the bank angle automatically switches to low bank when the aircraft is above 25,100 feet MSL. Pushing the heading button activates the heading flight director mode. If the aircraft is not on the selected heading, the flight director will turn towards the selected heading. The heading track knob is a dual concentric knob with a push sync function. The outer knob lets the pilot switch between heading and track mode on the HSI. Turning the inner knob permits the pilot to select a heading using the heading bug. When the nav button is pushed, the flight director arms, captures, and tracks the lateral course associated with the selected navigation source. Navigation sources include VOR, localizer, or FMS. When the approach button is pushed, the lateral and vertical approach modes are armed based on the navigation source selected. The auto throttle button is used to engage or disengage the auto throttle. In flight, pushing the AT button will engage the auto throttle and a green light will be illuminated over the button. If the AT button is pushed on the ground, the auto throttles will be armed for takeoff. The green light above the button will not illuminate, but a cyan AT will be displayed on the PFD to indicate the system is armed. The FMS manual knob is a dual function knob with a push select. Rotating the outer knob toggles between FMS and manual speed targets. When manual is selected, the speed bug is displayed on the airspeed tape and can be set by rotating the inner knob. Pushing the TCS button on the yoke will sync the speed bug to the current aircraft speed. If the outer knob is set to FMS, the inner knob does not function and the aircraft will maintain the predefined FMS managed speed. When FMS is selected, the speed bug is removed from the speed tape and a small magenta arrow indicates the scheduled FMS speed. The FLC button is used to engage the flight level change vertical mode, which will climb or descend, depending on the altitude set in the preselector. If the FMS manual knob is in the FMS position, the flight director will climb or descend at the scheduled FMS speed. If the knob is in the manual position, the speed bug is displayed, and the flight director will target the selected speed. The vertical speed button activates the vertical speed mode. This is a vertical mode in which the aircraft will pitch to maintain a set vertical speed. The pitch wheel is used to set the desired vertical speed. Pushing the VNAV button arms and activates the VNAV mode. For more details, refer to the videos on VNAV. When the altitude button is pushed, the flight director will capture the current altitude. The altitude knob is used to select the altitude that is set in the altitude pre-select window. The outer knob selects the altitude in 1,000-foot increments. The inner knob sets the altitude in 100-foot increments. The minimums knob is used to set the minimum altitude for an approach. This is displayed on the PFD. Pushing the knob toggles the minimums altitude between barometric and radar altitude. Radar altitude minimums are for reference only and cannot be used to determine approach minimums. For more information on the flight guidance panel or the available lateral and vertical modes, refer to the Honeywell Pilot's Guide.